So for whatever reasons, we're starting over because it stopped recording. Maybe you didn't like what I was saying. I don't know. But we'll start over. So saga, stories, all that sort of nifty shit. Skunks. Skunks are the stories. I have, I think I mentioned before that there's a couple skunks who live underneath the barn of my neighbor. At least I think that's where they live. And my neighbor's gone. And so they discovered that I feed the birds. Lots of people feed the birds. And there's a lot of bird seed on the ground. And so now they show up in the morning to eat the bird seed on the ground. When I go to let Josephine out, there's a damn skunk. In the morning, at night. So last night, I go out and I got my light on, my phone, and I rattle the door really loud because they'll run away. The bad thing is if you corner them, they won't run. They raise that tail, and that sucks. Boy, that sucks. So yeah, I rattle the door, make noises, and I go outside and stand on the porch, and I see one underneath the bird feeder, under the porch light, and the porch light's movement sensitive, so it turns off when no one's moving, and the skunk was far enough away it wasn't picking it up. So it turned off, and I picked up some of Josephine's tennis balls, and I start tossing them at the skunk because I'm like, leave, and then had some big rocks, pretty rocks, I like rocks, on the back porch. So I start throwing them over at the skunk, and the light comes on. I don't see the skunk, and I'm like, yes! So I go to step off the back patio, and here comes a little bastard from this end. He comes around my smoker, and he stops, and I'm like, bah! And he looks at me, and he's like, whoa! His tail's all up, and I'm like, oh shit, life's gonna suck. And then he runs off. And so I start going the perimeter, because they stay on the perimeter, to see if they're hiding anywhere. And I see lights in the neighbor's backyard, and I'm like, oh, life is really gonna get interesting. So, I go over to the fence, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? Can I help you? I'm like, man, we're the police. I'm like, great, police. Not that I don't like police. I mean, I do, but still. Out here to do the perimeter and skunk patrol. And so they were asking about my neighbor and how long they'd left and stuff like that. And it's been a couple months, and I told him, I said, I don't know if you want to hang out back there because there's a skunk, and I think it lives underneath the barn. And he's like, oh yeah, we're just leaving. I'm like, oh yeah. Anyway, so exciting evening. Whew, boy, it was an exciting evening. And then, black and white stray kitty's been back. It's not a skunk, it is a kitty. Very friendly kitty. Skinny as hell, but very friendly. Wants to be pet and meows at you and wants you to stand there while he's eating and everything. And he's just pretty. And my cats do not care for him. He likes to come to the door. And then there's a tabby stray who looks much healthier. So I think maybe he's not a stray. Maybe he's just an outdoor cat. And he was in the backyard checking out the birds on my little bird bath. He really appreciated that little bit of entertainment as he was skulking all down and doing that, winding himself up. So lots of adventures in my house. Whew, dogs. Can't keep up. And here we have another night reading. Yes, Goblin Proofing One's Chicken Coop by Reginald Bakeley and forward by Clint Marsh. Check it out. We are on Goblin Proofing One's Chicken Coop. It's cozy. With subchapters: The Gentlemanly Art of Chickenry, What Are Goblins? Vileness of the Changeling Eggs, Goblin Migrations, Ley Lines and Ley Markers, Desanctification. Ooh, heavy stuff. Surely, there is no pursuit more rewarding than the gentlemanly art of chickenry. Who says it's got to be gentlemanly? What the hell? Pretentious fuck. Anyways, back we are. For a minor initial investment, an individual can provide boundless meat and eggs for himself and his family, and will reap the benefits of a natural alarm clock in the form of a rooster's crow at dawn. Can't have roosters in the city limits here. Just a note. The dark forces of the Fae never truly let man rest, however, and the threat of a goblin intrusion into the hen cottage is a danger which can destroy a fine coop, its residents, and the very will of the farmer. Raccoons do the same thing, just so you know. But a few simple checks and alterations to your existing chicken coop can keep it and its plucky cluckers secure against this unbearable prospect. Goblins are the marauding vagabonds of the fairy kingdom, roving alone or in mobs from town to town. They relish upsetting the sensibilities of man and fairy alike with their crass ways. Goblins love to eat eggs, and delight in using them in pranks, and they are known to lodge in chicken coops in two ways, as willing tenants or as changelings. Who knew? The former wander into the hen cottage and decide to stay, or in some instances are trapped, the mechanics of which I will explain shortly. The latter, changelings, are swapped during their goblin infancy for a hen of your own. Both types of goblins are hazardous, as they will grow into warped versions of your hens if left in the coop. Aside from the peril presented by their eggs, which they do indeed begin to lay after a short while, goblin hens are notorious for their tempers, which are nearly as quick as their razor-sharp beaks. Ah, there's a picture. Ah, so entertaining. Yeah, turn the page. Okay, here we go. To keep goblins from approaching your hen cottage voluntarily, it is advisable that you keep the place as tidy as possible. A thorough cleaning every 2 weeks will maintain your chicken's happiness and health, and will repel potential miscreants from calling the little house their own, as goblins prefer dwellings similar to the murky, filthy caves of their own kingdom. Nothing spoils a carefully prepared breakfast like the cracking of a changeling egg. Whilst I have a hell of a time with that word. Whilst so many of these dangerous, here's another word, ovids, look and feel perfectly normal, they possess repulsive qualities seldom noticed until mealtime. Some are filled with maggots, others with blood. There are reports of changeling eggs as hard as concrete, and others which explode when broken. A few have beautiful shells, which hatch tuberculosis and smallpox. Well, that would suck. The Ungerslud family of Shropshire was the unlucky recipient of a goblin curse via changeling eggs. For the morning after the eggs were eaten, the lot of them awoke with their legs on backwards, as they remain today. Young Eddie Ungerslud, that's a hell of a last name, went on to become a source of local pride by clinching the National Backwards Hopscotch Championship later that year. But surely you can imagine that life is not all fun and games under such a curse. In all honesty, it's not always the goblin's fault when it becomes trapped in a chicken coop. Being stubborn and rather stupid lot, goblins are not able to change their course unless sensibly advised. And so it is not uncommon that, when traveling from place to place, these nomadic scoundrels enter into structures from which, according to their own obstinate logic, there is no escape. A small crack between the planks of the east-facing wall of the coop, for example, will trap any goblin coming from that direction, unless there is a corresponding gap on the west side. I know people like that. A chicken farmer in St. Leonard's Grange on England's southern coast once discovered a goblin in his coop. When the surprised rustic asked the goblin whence it came, it responded, "From the far, far north." To the question of, "And where are you going?" the inmate replied, "To the far, far south." Simple logic. Yeah, I know people like that. Indeed, upon inspection, the farmer found a minor crevice in the northern wall of the coop and none in the south. Wise to the goblin's ways, the farmer kindly offered to pry a plank from the south wall to free him, but warned him that there was nothing in that direction but the cold, dark sea. The grateful intruder admitted that he had no idea he would have leapt into the ocean with his next steps and asked the farmer if there was anything he could do to repay his favor. The simpleton thought for a long while, and as one does when granted a fairy wish, finally decided that Goblin should marry his daughter. That's what you do? Ooh. Who knew? Who was very ugly and more trouble than she was worth. Well, maybe that's why. Huh. Who's to judge, right? The Goblin agreed happily and took the horrified, screaming girl with him on his way back to the northern coast. The farmer breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that life would be good from then on. His breakfast safe from repulsive changeling eggs. That's good. What a hell of a... sorry. That's funny. I don't care who you are. Ley lines are channels of energy which run along the surface of the earth, tracing connecting pathways between circular stones and burial mounds and other particular geographical features, and man-made edifices. Fairies of all sorts, including goblins, use them as a network of highways. If your chicken coop happens to rest upon one of these channels, then you, my fine fellow, not a woman, of course. It's only a matter of time before you acquire your first changeling hen. Every chickener should check his hen's cottage location and ensure it is not built on a ley line. On a cloudless day, climb to the roof of the coop. I want video of that. And point to the tail end of its weather vane in the precise direction of the nearest site of the ancient and mysterious origin. Okay. If there is no such place in sight, as you stand atop the roof, get down and with the help of a map and the following list of ley markers from Alfred Watkins' The Old Straight Track, find the most significant example nearest your farm. First, we have to turn the page back, because guess what? There's pictures! Oh, pictures! I believe that is the ocean that the Goblin was going to step into. Backstory. Watkins' list of ley markers in descending order of importance. Mounds, burial mounds, and similar earthworks. Stones, megaliths of various description. Circular moats, castles. Traditional wells, early churches, crossroads, road alignments, especially those longer than 1.5 miles, notched fords, unnotched fords, tree groups, particularly those upon named hills, ancient named trees, hillside notches, track junctions, camps and hill forts, ponds, and square moats. So those are ley markers, in case you didn't know. In his mythology of the British Isles, Geoffrey Ashe notes that the hillside figures, such as the chalk course of Uffington and Cheryl, have recently been added to the bottom of the list. As such, these are fine for you to use in a pinch. Here's a picture. Da-da-da, check that out. Oh. Return to the roof. Once the weather vane is positioned with the tail feathers pointing towards the ascertained ley marker, squat down and align your gaze on the opposite side. Nope. Align your gaze in the opposite direction. Oh, don't mess that up. Don't mess that up. Okay. Along the path of the weather vane's arrow. So let's start that over. Return to the roof. Once the weather vane is positioned with the tail feathers pointing towards the ascertained ley marker, in the opposite direction along the path of the weather vane's arrow. I think I skipped part of that, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to go read it again. You got it. If along its line you see or note on your map anything listed above, be it well or moat, notch or mound, then you are advised straight away to fashion for your coop a doormat which reads, "Welcome, sprites," for you will soon be entertaining such guests. Researchers have concluded that ley lines can at times be quite broad, stretching miles across, and dowsers have determined that ley lines sometimes have a slight curve to them. Allowing an extra 10 degrees to either side of your weather vane arrow's path may therefore give you a clearer sense of your coop's susceptibility to changelings. Just think, raccoons, fox, and changelings. Danger to the chickens. Oh, and hawks. Understand hawks like them too. Apart from leaving the door to your coop open at night, which would clear out chickens both changeling and standard, or the costly solution of constructing a coop entirely of iron, oh, don't do that, which is as good as poison to the goblins. There isn't much one can do with the structure itself to keep the rogues from setting up camp. One must either move to a new farm in disgrace, or, and you might like to sit down before reading this, divert the lay. Some readers might think that going to the bother of constructing a new lay marker an appropriate number of miles distance from one's farm is a rash step in their work to thwart the goblins. It is actually not as outlandish as a proposal as it first sounds, and I will explain why. Think of a new ley line marker as you do your chicken coop. It is structure that costs something to build. It is relatively inexpensive to maintain and provides advantages to future generations. One must take the long view when envisioning such things. Yeah, don't take the short view. I made a joke. Foremost, it diverts the ley line, curving it around your farm and leaving you safeguarded against goblins. Furthermore, a new site will bring additional commerce to your town in the form of holiday seekers. To maximize potential profit at your farmstead, commission and stock souvenir egg cups emblazoned with the painting of the new ley marker. If you are not already volunteering for your town council, now is the time to begin. Within a space of a few years, you will undoubtedly have the clout necessary to secure a site and successfully petition for a government grant to fund construction. In many towns, the local chapter of the Freemasons is more than capable of building a qualifying ley marker. Because the fraternity's interest in ancient I can't say it. That's awesome. Mysteries. There we go. Okay, let's do that one again. Because of the fraternity's interest in ancient mysteries and the order's roots in construction, not to mention its core precepts of charity and brotherhood, such a task is well in keeping with Masonic ideas. The occasional delivery of fresh eggs to the lodge hall should be enough to establish initial relations. It is all that is required once you've secured their aid is an idea of which sort of site to construct and a certain amount of cash. Brotherhood or not, stone circles and the like are not built on the cheap. The secretary of your local chapter can provide you with a list comparing types of sites and their prices. Choose from Watkins' list one of the greater importance than the site nearest your farm. Building a site of lesser grandeur will not bend the lay, and no ley line worth its salt will be going out of its way to align with a scruffy little chalk horse. Scruffy little chalk horse. Oh, we have pictures. Chickens. Peacock. And a rooster. Peacock. Make it grand. Costs vary between lodges and depend somewhat on the season, but any price seems reasonable once you've spent a few moments thinking of the resulting benefits. In the event you've gone all out and piled up a fully featured burial mound stocked with its own assortment of ancient kings and venerable artifacts, then you ought to feel particularly pulled towards the new ley marker yourself, along with all the dark fae and day trippers. So powerful is its eerie gravity. Well done. If, however, your site falls more than a few places down Watkins' list, it is best to go one step further and have it de-sanctified. This necessary procedure begins a flow of unnatural energy which will attract goblins away from your farm. And this, sadly, is where the real expenditure comes in. Petition the bishop of your diocese for an official certificate of desanctification. Bribery is not out of the question in these cases, and bishops aren't going to settle for the occasional bucket of eggs either. As a bargaining point in the negotiations, it can prove beneficial to remind the bishop that the upturn in tourism may increase his flock. Even with this in mind, one should be prepared to spend roughly twice the rate of construction for a proper desanctification. Once all is squared up, and the last bounty to hire will be that of the dowser, who, forked stick wavering before him, can verify with certainty that the ley line has in fact curved around your plot. Go to bed early, my happy friend, and rise at dawn to gather eggs from your freshly goblin-proofed chicken coop. That's so astounding. So I was stationed in Germany for a few years, and there was a tree in the woods. I loved it. I have a picture of it. And it was called the Alta, something like that. Old one. And it was dated at 1605. And it had this huge cavity, and it was still live. But it had this huge cavity in it, and I never looked in the cavity because I was always afraid of what I would see. Yeah, just a nifty little trivia. So have a great one. Bye.